All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're glad to have you with us here tonight. Want to offer a couple of housekeeping items as we dive in. First, I wanted to just say you are the heart of America's Kids Belong. It's your love for kids in foster care that is changing lives, and we're really glad that you're here tonight. Tonight is for you. Um, Even though we're on Zoom, we'd love for you to just imagine that you're curled up in a living room. We're all together, and we just want this to feel like a casual conversation. Brian's a casual guy, and we just want to share some of the findings of his book and want you to ask questions. There's a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and so ask questions as they come up for you, and we'll do our best to answer them. This isn't a super formal program tonight. You're here because you already know and believe in the power of family. You know what it is when a child who once felt invisible now feels seen and known and loved. And that's the hopeful side of foster care that we are so fortunate to live in every day. Now, in our 11th year, America's Kids Belong has walked with more than 4,000 waiting kids, and more than half of them have been matched with families. But 100,000 more are still waiting. And so tonight we're going to go upstream to look at what happens when a child turns 18 and ages out alone without a family. Up to 90% of sex trafficking victims were once in foster care. 74% of males and 43% of females end up incarcerated, and 20% of former foster youth become homeless on the day they age out, on the day they turn 18. Foster care isn't just one issue, it's upstream of nearly every social wound we see in our communities today, and families offer a safe harbor from that. And that's the heartbeat of Brian Mavis's new book, Go Upstream, Diving into Foster Care to Heal 10 Social Wounds. Tonight, Brian's going to share a couple of excerpts. He's going to share some of his vision around foster care and these social wounds, and we're going to answer your questions. But first, hear this: everything that you do, whether it's giving, fostering, praying, or advocating, is doing so much more than helping a child. You're pouring hope into entire communities that will nurture lives for generations to come. So thank you. Get comfy now and join me as we welcome AKB's founder and my friend, and tonight our featured author, Brian Mavis. Hello, Brian.
Hi, Nanette. Man, you made me sound important. Interesting.
That's what I
So,
do.
yeah, good job. Good job. Everyone, thanks for coming tonight and really want to use the next 30 minutes in a way that you feel not just informed, but hopeful. And also a sense of knowing what you can do next to help make an impact. And so I want to start off by sharing kind of the why behind this book. And it began years and years ago, even before America's Kids Belong started. I was on staff at a church, and my role was the CUNY transformation pastor. And so we had a whole bunch of partnerships with dealing with all sorts of social causes. And as I got to know some of these people in those causes, it became I just started like figuring out hearing their stories that they all had something fairly in common, and that was they had a really hard childhood, and there seemed to be a lot of commonality that they had some sort of history with child welfare. And so that is the thing. I'm kind of known as a heart guy, but uh, it was the strategic side of things that really captured my attention to this issue. And I thought, thank God for nonprofits and ministries that help with human trafficking, help with addiction, help with suicide, help with crisis pregnancy, help with homelessness, all those things. But I thought, wouldn't it be good if we could help kids who are from families that have been so broken that they've been broken up and the kids have been removed? Wouldn't it be good if we could help kids have families, healthy, safe, loving families, so that they wouldn't need those ministries or nonprofits when they were adults? And the kind of tagline I came up with years ago and put in this book was a good family is better than a great program. And I truly do believe that. The other reason, and it's similar but different, is if I imagined if you went out and did kind of a man on the street interview and you asked people, when you think about social wounds and causes in your town that need to be addressed, what comes to mind? And I believe that a lot of people would say something like homelessness because it's something that they see when they're out on the street. They might also say mental health because a lot of times that's related. They might say addiction. They might say human sex trafficking, those kinds of things. But what you would almost never hear is foster care. And kids in foster care, it is a hidden issue. And part of that's intentional. It's meant to protect the child and their location, that kind of thing. But because it's hidden, people think it doesn't exist in their town. And it does. It's in every county in the country, and every county in the country is in a at a point where they're like, we have kids in care who are staying in group homes, who are staying in
Mhm.
facilities. In fact, I just heard this 2 weeks ago from my daughter. One of her best friends is a counselor, and she had just done a learning stint at the Children's Hospital down in Denver called Anschutz. And she came back and told my daughter the psychological wing of that children's hospital, the mental wing. She said it's full of kids in foster care, and they're
Mhm.
not there because they have mental struggles. They're there because there's nowhere to put them. There's no
Wow.
families, no homes, and so that is not unique to Colorado. It's everywhere, and I one of the big goals out of this book and one of the things I want to empower you with, and would love for you to be an ambassador, is to when people say and ask what causes ought to be addressed, that foster care would be one of the first things that comes off the tip of their tongue because they say it's not just whacking at the limbs, it's whacking at the roots of so many other social issues, and pe more people need to get involved. And if they don't address this issue, you're going to address them later
Mhm.
as young adults outside of the foster care system and inside other system of homelessness, incarceration, addiction, being trafficked, those kinds of things. So that's why I wrote this book.
It's interesting, Brian, when you talk about the lack of visibility. I think one of the reasons is because it's a government program, because there's often a perception that the government's handling this and it's not something we need to be involved in. But when we were preparing for today, you made an interesting point that it is one issue where the government does invite us to participate. They invite us into this, they don't invite us into pothole filling. But
Right.
speak to that a little bit, how that is an ally and a challenge when it comes to foster care as a national issue.
Well, yeah, thanks for you. Yeah, you pointed out two almost they're not contradictory, but they're intention. That a lot of people do think when it's like, yeah, of course I've heard of foster care, and and that's something the government takes care of. They have it under control. They have enough homes or enough group homes, those kinds of things, and that is only partly true. Yes, they have the legal protection of them, the legal authority at that moment in the child's life, but they aren't a family.
Mhm.
And that's kids need families to be raised in, not institutions. And if they are raised in institutions, they become institutionalized and they have trouble connecting the rest of their life with a normal, healthy family and other kinds of
Mhm.
relationships. They fail in just relationships in general. And but the other side of the coin, that tension part is there's this is the one thing that the government invites households and families and individuals to say, we'd love for you to be the key part of this solution, where you're not only opening up your heart to this child, you're opening up your home, or you're supporting a family who has opened up their home to them
Mhm.
for a season or maybe for the rest of their
Mhm.
lives as an
Mhm.
adoptive family. And so it's again, they don't ask us to, hey, can you volunteer filling up potholes or other kinds of things the government's in charge of, but they're asking you to do this. And this also, it's not a job. It's your life. I mean,
That's right.
it's 24/7. And I know, and another thing I want to dispel is some of you might be thinking, yes, I mean, there are a small percentage of families that are saying yes to that child coming into their life for a season or for a longer time. But that's not me, and that's not for me. And one of the things that has to change is the system, child welfare system, is broken. It's the best thing we've got, but it's broken. And you're not, I don't think you're going to fix the system, but you can improve the ecosystem, which
Mhm.
with by having more people and better people involved, and you can say, okay, this child has a family, but the family doesn't have a village. And so you can be part of that village. So a family for every child and a village for every family. And so there's always a place for you to make the ecosystem better so that the child has their best possible chance of healing and finding either restoration with their family or a new, more healthy, positive um, path in their life.
And that's one of the great things about your book is the first half is very hard to, for me, even the time I've spent in this space, I found it shocking the level of contribution, the connection, correlation between foster care and some of these really painful wounds. And I know the second half you dig into solutions and offer a lot of ways that anybody, whether they can foster or not, can help to make a difference. So we'll definitely get into that. Let's go back to the beginning and talk about the title of your book, because Go
Mm.
Upstream is an interesting notion. And I think the idea of being able to get to something at a root cause level is really compelling. So you've had a lot of lived experience, both as a foster parent and foster grandparent, and then obviously your life's work here with America's Kids Belong. Why that title? And tell us a little bit about the analogy. You have a really interesting analogy in the introduction around a waterfall and really paying that metaphor off. So maybe read a little bit of that or share more about why that title and why that means so much to this message.
Yeah, so the introduction to this book is kind of the grand sweep where it does mention all 10 wounds, but I did want to give a mental picture for people and was really struck by a gal who, her name's Annika. She's actually a family friend, but she grew up in foster care and then later was adopted as in her late 20s. And she said this. She said, when youth age out of foster care, we age out of one crisis and into another. And so it's like, okay, this is true, and she recognizes that. So I in some going upstream, I mean that's not unique to me. You probably have heard that phrase before. Maybe the only unique wrinkle here was I added a waterfall to this metaphor. So I'll read just real briefly. Say, imagine you're standing on a riverbank and just downstream from a waterfall. Suddenly, you see a young man plunge over the falls, crashing into the river below. He cries for help are desperate. You see him struggling, the icy current pulling him under, and without hesitation, you dive in. You fight the current, pushing against the cold, and reach him just in time. Clinging to him tightly, you pull him back to safety, you revive him, and somehow you know this young man has been homeless. But before you can catch your breath, it happens again. You see a young woman swept over the falls. Her arms flail, her voice cuts through the noise, screaming for help. You jump back in, swimming harder this time. You pull her to shore. She breathes, but you can tell that this woman, has been trafficked. But the cries for help don't stop. another and another and then another. And exhausted but undaunted, you jump back into the water, pulling person after person to safety. And with each person, you sense they are battling addiction, incarceration, poverty, or another social wound. And that's when it hits you. You're so busy saving people downstream, you've never stopped to look upstream.
Mm.
What's happening above the waterfall? Why are so many falling in? When you finally go upstream, the cause is clear. Many of those you've rescued share a history, foster care. They've aged out of the system without a family, without anyone to catch them before they fell. The waterfall, it's the risky transition out of foster care. The river below, it's the social wounds they face, homelessness, addiction, incarceration, and more. So, um, I want to make clear, foster care isn't really the problem. It's, in fact, foster care can be, it's meant to be that safe place for that child. I mean, imagine what they're going through, where a judge actually feels like the best thing for this child is to be removed from their home. Something not good is happening. And so to be placed in a home where they actually experience protection, safety, they experience a chance to heal and heal themselves in a bit. Um, when because there aren't enough families and there aren't enough good ones, the kids get bounced around, they get in group homes, and they stay in the system for years and never get connected to a family. And then they age out at 18 thinking, nobody cares about me, so why should I care about myself? And they end up with a lot of risk to be vulnerable to homelessness, addiction. They're, again, the highest population in the country being risk of being trafficked. And that's because they're looking for a family and that the pimp becomes a false family. So it's
Mhm.
all those kinds of things that lead to those wounds.
So trafficking is one that, because of the percentage, the potential, and I know those numbers are hard to find reliable data, but if potentially up to 90% of trafficking victims have been
Yeah,
in
and I
foster
never found
care.
like yeah, I found gosh, I cite almost 200 sources in this entire book, and there's probably at least 10 around trafficking. I never found a source that had
Mm.
fewer than half. So when the source would be a group of people, usually women, were rescued in a sting operation from being trafficked. Never once was it fewer than 50% of those rescued had connection to foster care.
When you can see the vulnerability, especially on aging out, you've got no support network, no protection around you. I thought your representation of that, if you would read a little bit from the introduction to that chapter, I think it was a conversation with a social worker, but just
Yeah.
helping to put some meat on the bones of how does that happen? What's the connection? What's the pipeline there?
Yeah, so if you haven't read the book, every chapter that has a social wound starts off with a true story, and this one was the most anonymous one. I mean, some of them I always say the first name, but this one I just used a pseudonym named Wifey. But so it starts off with that title. And it goes like this. It says, I was talking with a child welfare worker in a West Coast county, and she said, the pimps will take them. That line hit me like a punch to my gut. She explained that when kids age out of foster care at 18, they're given a housing stipend of $1,000 a month that basically covers rent for a bedroom in this expensive county. The county happens to be Los Angeles County. She said, good families don't want these kids, but the pimps will take them. They will take all their money and force them into sex trafficking. Predators exploit and girls who age out of the foster care, as well as runaways, because they have unmet needs for family and emotional relationships. The traffickers promise to meet those needs using emotional manipulation, drug abuse, and violence to control them. Victims are trained to call sex traffickers daddies and themselves wifeys, a perverted reflection of the family unit that these children are seeking. While the term wifey is often used with girls, boys in foster care are also at risk of sexual exploitation. In fact, some studies suggest that up to 30 to 40% of child sex trafficking victims are male, but they are less likely to be identified or offered help. Traffickers may use feminizing names like princess or boy, BOI, to break down a boy's sense of self or promise them brotherhood and protection. Because society is often blind to male victims, these boys can fall through the cracks even faster. These children long for a family, even if it means being subjected to extreme violence and abuse. As one victim put it, being in foster care was the perfect training for commercial sexual exploitation. I was used I was used to being moved without warning. So that's like, okay, she's in a foster home, and then all of a sudden she has to go to another home, either because the system did it or the family said we can't do this anymore. So they bounce from home to home. Um, in fact, Nanette, we just talked to somebody
Yeah,
who adopted two girls from our work, and these girls were how old were
four
they
and
when they were
six.
4 and 6, and they had been in 23 homes up to that point. So this is common that kids get bounced around. So I was used to being moved without warning, without any say, not knowing where I was going or whether I was allowed to pack my clothes. After years in foster care, I didn't think anyone would want to take care of me unless they were paid. So when my pimp expected me to make money to support, quote unquote, the family, it made sense to me. And so the conditions that they're used to growing up in just make them extremely vulnerable to this wicked kind of false family where they're bounced around and drugged and trafficked and and they think it's kind of normal.
It's a great point. The nuance that it's not just the physical reality of being cast into the world without a support system, but it's the conditioning that happens in that sense of not belonging, that yearning that we hear so often when we do the video of Kids and I Belong
Yeah,
project.
yeah, that's why we call it the I Belong Project and why
Mhm.
it's called America's Kids Belong. The key word is belong.
Right.
And they sent, yeah, and they're looking. I mean, they're hungering for belonging. So when they get this false belonging, it's better than nothing.
So another thing I'm curious to hear is you looked at a lot of different wounds. There were 10 altogether, and I'm sure there's many more that you just didn't chronicle for the sake of the book.
Yeah, like
What
hunger was
surprised
another one.
you?
They all have hunger issues,
Yeah.
and I didn't put that down. I was like, I'm just sticking with 10 because 10, you know.
So were there any that surprised you? Was there something that was new information to you despite your longevity in the space?
Yeah, in fact, it's why I didn't put hunger is like I think that's one um maybe everybody kind of already knows it. It's no surprise, and it tends to be an issue that honestly it gets dealt with fairly
Hmm.
easily.
Hmm.
There's not a relational component to it. It is a transactional thing, and that works great. The one that surprised me the most was physical illness, that kids in foster care are far more likely as adults, if they don't get connected to a family, to be physically ill. In fact, um, the like stats here are overall, let's see, 30 to 80% of children who come into foster care with at least one medical problem, and one-third have a chronic medical condition. It is common for such problems to go undiagnosed and untreated before the children enter foster care, and then up to 80% of children and adolescents enter foster care with a significant mental health need and almost 40% significant health issues. And then it continues, like if they don't get the help they need, then as adults, they're more likely to have a chronic illness. They die younger. And so, and part of it is you could be like, okay, there are kids who get abused so badly. One of
Hmm.
my best friends was in foster care and abused so badly. He's my age. He's still dealing with the abuse that he received from his um, biological father. But most of the kids, it's chronic stress that just goes through their
Hmm.
bodies, and they're
Hmm.
always on high alert, and it ends up doing permanent damage to them. In fact, the girl that I opened up the story with, Claire, um, she died because of severe neglect to the point where she just wasn't getting the help that she needed and the medical care she needed, and she ended up at 17 dying.
Yeah, that's just crushing. The adverse childhood experiences, there's more and more being learned about that and the correlation to your actual physical health and well-being. Another one that really impacted me was Richard,
Mm.
because it's the outcome without I belong, without belonging, that he had so much despair, such a deep sense of unworthiness that it ultimately led to his suicide. And I wondered if you just read a little bit of his story. And I think, as we were talking about, you think about kids being moved from place to place. I think about the videos that we've watched from My Belong Project and hearing the simple request for family and connection that kids are seeking. And in his case, he was just denied that for so long, that he ultimately just lost hope. And it was so sad.
Yeah, this boy is the only one that I mentioned his last name because it was a public story. But kids who age out of foster care, disconnected family, are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than their peers. So Richard Cardinal was just 17 when he hung himself from a birch tree. It was the backyard of his 16th foster home. During the 14 years, he was 17. During the 14 years that Richard was in foster care, he had 28 separate placements, 16 foster homes and 12 group homes and locked facilities. Separated from siblings and longing to belong to a family, he made several attempts at suicide, at one time writing "Help me" in his own blood. Richard poured his heart out in anguish into a diary, lamenting loneliness. In one of his final entries, he wrote, "I'm skipping the rest of the years because it continues to be the same. I want to say to people involved in my life, don't take this personally. I just can't take it anymore." Gosh, it makes me think of a girl that we did a video for in Tennessee, and she was 17 when we did the video, and she ended up being adopted, and she confessed that she had plans to commit suicide on her 18th birthday if she wasn't in a family, and she wasn't bluffing because she continued to struggle with that issue. She's now doing well a few years into it, but she when she was around 17, 18, she had attempted in the most bizarre way swallowing razor blades, and
Yeah.
because of the family adopted her, they were able to save her, and she's now doing well.
So I'm anxious to, this is all so heavy and so true. And I think the stories drive the data home. The statistics are amazing and impactful, but the human stories and the human face that you put on it is what really, I think, makes this book so compelling. There is a great question that I think a lot of people have about foster care, which is, what's the root cause for so many failed placements? And then we'll turn our attention to some of the hope.
Yeah, I don't want to assume some knowledge here, so I want to first of all paint the big picture that essentially every child who enters foster care, okay, so there's been probably multiple reports. Finally, an investigation does lead to a removal of the child, and the judge says that this child needs to enter the system. At every one of those kids, when they entered the system, the goal is reunification. During that process, 25% the goal changes because there's now a permanent break with that family. And it's usually because of one of two things. The family is so deep into their addiction, and usually it's like heroin and fentanyl, that they're not doing any of the work to recover their child and not showing up to any meetings and not doing any of the things they're supposed to do. So after usually a year or two of not doing those things, the child is put into the place of going into an adoptive family. The other reason can be, and is that in the discovery phase of like what's happening in this child's life, if it's discovered that the child has been severely abused or sexually abused, there's that's usually a permanent, that not usually, it's a permanent break. And so that child goes in. So 75% stay on this track towards reunification, 25% towards adoption. Now, both of those, some of those kids will never get adopted, and some of those kids will never be reunified, though, even though they were put on that track. And the reason then, why if they get placed into a family, why some of those fail is because the families feel alone. They feel like they're not supported, and it's hard. They're like, this child is in our life, and nobody seems to understand that how hard it can be. And we care
Mhm.
about this child, and we're in this, but gosh, we could use some support, emotional, tangible physical support, spiritual support through prayer, those kinds of things. So when families, so when a family becomes a foster family, let's say 100 of them become foster families today and have a child placed with them. A year from now, only 50 will be left. A year from then, 2 years out, will be 25 left. It continues to go down that path unless they're feeling seen and supported by others like you. Then their attrition rate goes from 50% to 10%. So 90% stay in the game. So it is, again, it's so important not only that every child have a family, but every family has a village or a community to support them.
So I think the premise is that there aren't enough foster families, right? There's only about half as many families as there are kids in care. And so always there's a need for more people to step up and consider fostering, consider the different forms of fostering that maybe you can touch on briefly. And then let's turn our attention to other ways. The second half of your book is helpful because all of us have an opportunity to have a
Yeah,
positive
yeah. The
impact.
first half of the book is depressed.
It's
I mean,
heavy.
I try to end each chapter with, hey, there's hope here. But I mean, each one is starts off with these
Mhm.
hard stories. But yeah, the second half of the book is upstream solutions, and it's like diving into foster care, diving into be an adoptive parent, diving in to different ways you can help, and then finally asking at the conclusion, where will you dive in? And so, yeah, there are, again, the point of this is uh, it's not just doom and gloom. There's ways that you can help and make a huge difference in a kid's life. Um, none of us are world changers, and I kind of don't like that. I'm raising a world changer. Like I didn't raise world
Mhm.
changers. I'm not a world changer, but you can change the world for someone.
Mhm.
And so that's what I want you to consider, whether that's a child or a family who's caring for a child. You can change their world.
And there are QR codes in the book that have different ways. Another thing you can do is go to our website, americaskidsbelong.org, and the top navigation has a support families link. And we have a lot of opportunities outlined there, a way for you to learn about RAP teams and respite care and ways that allow you to step into the issue and lend some support to kids and to families who are in need. So I think as a final question, if we looked ahead, AKB just finished its 10th year. We're in our 11th year now. 10 years from now, Brian, do you think America will still have 20,000 kids a year aging out alone, or will we finally have gone upstream and fixed it? And if we want to believe the second, what needs to be true, starting, now to have that be a different answer 10 years from now?
I can see both scenarios being true. That 10 years from now, it'll still be 20,000 or more kids aging out. I also can see a scenario where it's far less than that. Um, and it depends. It depends on whether foster care is going to be elevated into the public awareness like human trafficking is, like homelessness is, like mental health is. I mean, it gets lots of attention. And so lots of people know about it. Lots of money gets poured into it. People are looking for solutions. If foster care got that kind of attention, that kind of awareness, if you guys could be those little ambassadors that start that ripple effect, then far more kids could have families, could have belonging, and not become statistics and victims of social wounds as adults.
And I think that's one of the most gratifying parts of what we do is that we get to see some of those stories happen. The average age of the child that we serve is 12, closer to 13. And it
Hmm.
sometimes takes up to 2 years to find a family, but we find many of those kids' families. And so, in the spirit of hope, as we
Yeah.
wrap up, and we're only going to keep you a couple more minutes, we wanted to share a video. We had an opportunity last year to record a story with a young man named Miguel who had been in foster care most of his life. In the longer version of this video, he talks about how he stopped engaging when he was in a new placement, that he just would go to his room and sleep his life away because he just felt so unwanted and he knew he was going to be moved again and just didn't have the energy. And then a woman who is a foster and adoptive parent was watching our videos and sharing them on social media and saw his story. And so we just want to share this with you real briefly. It's about 2 minutes.
Can you turn up the sound?
and just adore us or just be there supporting us. But for me, I always thought of myself, I'm never gonna get a family. No one's gonna come see me. When I first met them, my first visit mentor, I always go to my bed when they leave. I always say, I really miss them. I want to visit them every day.
So about 3 years ago, one of the first Georgia Kids Belong shoots that I was involved with, we were at a community center in Acworth. There was a child there, Miguel, is coming in from this group home experience. Probably, I'm guessing in his mind, kind of wondering if they'll ever have family.
I was feeling lonely. I had no one to talk to. I've been to a lot of foster homes. Ever since I got separated from my family, it's just been so hard.
I remember the shots we got of him he wasn't super active and super all over the place, but they were very, very sweet because you can see he is a very, very sweet young man, and you could see that kind of in the way he would handle himself, the way he would kind of look, at the people that were engaging with him. So fast forward a little bit, and Hannah sees his video.
At the time, he was getting really close to turning 18 and aging out of the system. Something about that really stuck with me. And we didn't know what our relationship could be like for Miguel at the time, but we did know that we could be mentors for him.
At first, I was a little bit nervous, but when I got used to them, meeting them, the whole family, I said, I really like this family. I really hope they take me in.
Then that turned into him coming over for a weekend at our house, and then that turned into a little over a year ago moving in and becoming a part of our family.
Now I see the difference, oh, I have a family, I have a house that supports me, tells me, you're doing great, amazing, we're really proud of you, that you changed way different and achieved more goals in the future. Back then I was not smiling, I wasn't laughing, I used to be down. But now I got more opportunities with this family.
So, Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you. And we have three just simple, practical ways that you can help and can take a step if you're moved by the story, if you're moved by the book and the information in it, and you'd like to do something. We're going to offer you three different ways that you can help.
So yeah, the first one is that the videos that we do, and a lot of people think, oh, you just shoot a video for a kid. So there's so much work that goes into that. And we ask for the longest waiting kids. We have never said no to a kid. We've videoed over 4,000 kids. And we have a goal, Belong 1,000, is to video 1,000 more kids in the next about 2.5 years now. And it costs $3,000 to video a child and recruit for them for the next 2 years. And our average time for a placement is 9 months. And so, but if a child doesn't get placed in 2 years, and if they're still in the system, we'll do another video and keep recruiting for them, not give up on them. But it's just $3,000. And let me say this, these kids like Miguel, they would pay $1 million to have a family. It only takes 3,000. They don't have 3,000. And so it's if you have a chance to fund a child a chance to have a family for $3,000, I believe it's the most impactful $3,000 you'll ever give or spend in your life. And so there's
And
this QR code that that can lead you there. And then
I was just going to add the social costs that in light of your book, I think
oh
the other
yeah.
piece of that, right, is there's huge social costs to not having a family that
Yeah,
this
you'll
helps
pay more
avoid.
than $3,000 in taxes for taking care of that child as as an adult. And and there's now it's estimated just among a few of those things like incarceration or homelessness, that kind of thing, that you'll spend $400,000 as a taxpayer, as citizens will per young adult, and hard social services.
And so that's the lifeblood of what we do for sure. And your support, any amount, helps to go against that and enables us to continue to do the work. And we don't take government funding. We are funded by people who care about kids and care about these issues. Here's the easiest one of the night. Order more copies of the book. If you don't have it, order it. It's on Amazon. There's a QR code there. We'll send an email after we close here tonight that'll have links for you. But get 2 copies. Pass one to someone you know who you think could benefit from understanding the full scope of foster care. Again, it's not on people's radar, and your passion, the fact that you gave up a half hour of your evening to be here and do a deep dive with us, says that you care about it and help people in your circle understand what it's about.
Yeah, we're wanting to equip you to be ambassadors, and if you with this book, and you would know more than 99% of people about this issue and its impact by just reading this book and then passing it on to others. So you'd be well equipped.
And if you really feel inspired tonight and you enjoyed this event, we'd love to invite you to consider hosting a gathering next year after Christmas with some of your friends and other people that you would like to share this story with. We can do it virtually, potentially could do it live. The QR code and the link that you'll have in the email only send you to an interest form to say, yeah, I'm open to it. And then we'd love to connect with you and just see what makes sense. It's simple, it's no pressure, there's no financial ask. It's really a way to build awareness and invite people into this issue. Hannah was looking at sharing I Belong Project videos and added to her family. You don't know who in your circle might be touched or moved to foster or adopt or otherwise get involved. And so those are our appeals. We hope you'll consider them. We're really grateful that you chose to spend your evening with us. And I'll let you have the final word, Brian.
I'll just end with one. Thank you so much. It starts with people who care, and you guys, you care, and you can make a difference just by sharing your heart. And we're hoping to equip you with some resources and words, and finally end with my tagline that a good family is better than a great program. So let's get these kids belonging to families.
All right. Thank you and good
Thank you,
evening.
everyone.